Hey everyone, how you doing today? Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. And as I mentioned in the daily financial news, we start our expert series strong with Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being our leadoff batter for
Yep.
our expert series Monday through Friday. So that's
I love it, man. Start strong, finish strong. Good start, good finish.
oh, I love that. Well, hey, I got a topic for you, and you are the right guy to talk to on this one. So there's a report out there by John Burns Real Estate Consulting, talk about Investor Mania 2.0. I was lucky enough to have the author on last week, basically talking about single families, the place to be, lots of great stuff, financing this, that, the other, no crazy loans, nothing like last time. But there is one topic in there kind of right at the end that gives me the heebie-jeebies. It to me,
Hmm.
it feels bubble-like activity. It's really small, it's nascent, but it's enough to scare me, and I wanted to ask you about it. And that is fractional ownership of housing. The idea is,
Hmm.
hey, go buy an expensive house somewhere, Carmel, LA, Beverly Hills, wherever it is, and you can own 1/10 or 1/13 or theoretically 150 of it, and you would be essentially partners with, in that example, 49 other people. And that, I don't see single family homes, and maybe I could be wrong, but that just feels weird, I guess. What do you think?
Why though? Why does that bother you?
Well, I've owned a lot of houses, and I know that housing looks good on paper, it looks good in an Excel spreadsheet, but over time it has capital expenditures and
Hmm.
there are surprises. And to me, that feels almost like turning a house into an HOA. And I lived through the last crisis. And one of the biggest lessons is HOAs blew up because people just decided to stop paying when the value fell.
Yeah.
And people were left holding the bag. So the only thing I could imagine is it's going to be something similar, right? Because you're going to have to ask people, okay, here's your 1/10 or your 1/5 or your 150th. And oh, by the way, we're going to ask for capital reserves every month, turn it into an HOA like thing. I'm sure they'll call it something else.
Hmm.
That feels good when the economy is expanding, but boy, when it rolls over, 49 people that you don't know, you're going to have 17 of them not pay that. And then you're going to get hit with a one-time assessment. And oh, it hurts my head to think about how this unravels. It feels good when housing is up. It feels horrible when housing goes down. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. 49 is a lot. I haven't seen too many case studies or examples of 49 individual, could be family owners,
Yeah.
couples, whatever, but 49, fractions of ownership sold. I guess, depending on how they're doing that, could be 1 week out of the year, and they sell so many weeks and so many are shut down for maintenance. But I like fractional ownership done right. So the area that
Okay.
I grew up in terms of my development career, we had several subdivisions that were developed as fractional ownership subdivisions.
Okay.
And it really came about, to your point of a bubble and all that, it really came about because back in the early to mid 90s, real estate market wasn't so great.
Mm-hmm.
And this was down in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, resort area, summer beach houses, uh, you know, before Airbnb, before VRBO. This was back in the day. People have been going to the Outer Banks forever, renting beach houses and staying there in the summer.
Right.
So, we were developing large houses down there
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't selling. So one of the ways to make it affordable was to fractionalize it.
Makes
So what
sense.
we sold we were selling, 12 units,
Mm.
for fractional ownership. So you might have, anywhere from 3, 4, 5 to 10, 12 owners. I've
Okay.
never seen, 40 or 50 or something like that. And then, there were people that would get together and buy these things, 3 or 4 families would get together and buy them and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And generally those houses would rent for 24 to 28 weeks out of the year, mostly spring, summer, a little bit of fall. So they were, vacant in the off season. And the idea would be in fractional ownership, those 12 weeks of off season, each of the owners could have, one of those weeks or something like that. So, however it went. But generally, what would happen is you'd create an HOA, like you said, you'd hire a property management company that would manage that HOA, which is kind
Mm-hmm.
of how it works in that area, so that no individual homeowner had to do it. You'd hire a
Right.
professional
Yeah.
association.
Makes sense.
They would manage it and they would do all that. So the units were off limits for a couple of weeks for maintenance, this, that, and the other, and that kind of thing. So it made it, sort of easy. And then as a builder developer, I used to build short-term vacation rental houses for people. That's kind of how I started my career.
Right.
And I had lots of groups that were coming in and building multi-million-dollar houses, with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 investors. And generally one person would head the whole thing up for everybody else, basically syndicating. Everybody else would kick the money in. This one person would kind of head things up, but they were all owners. So it's a very common thing when you get into multi-million-dollar properties, and it can be a great way to get into it, a good investment vehicle. But like you said, somebody's got to head it up. Somebody's got to manage it. And you don't really have to create an HOA. You can just
some
have
kind of umbrella.
You got to have an operating agreement. So you put the property in LLC, you have an operating agreement that spells out the ownership, what happens, buy sell agreements, maintenance, this, that, and the other. So everybody signs on for it. And then when there's a capital call for improvements, if you don't have the money or don't want to pony up, then you can sell your share to the other partners, or if they don't want it, an outside entity at an agreed upon price. So there's a lot of ways to structure it so it makes sense for everybody and it's safe. And it's not something that is created because properties are overinflated. What it's generally for is to give people access to a bigger, nicer property that otherwise can't afford it. Hence real estate syndication. That's what that's all about. Pooling capital so you can do bigger deals than you can do on your own.
Yeah. There's still, it still freaks me out. Cause again, I've been through it before. I've bought condos and busted condo associations on purpose at a crazy discount.
Yeah, now condos are a whole nother ball of wax. And, with those, the special assessments is what can get you there when you're subject to a condo association. And, I've owned condos where I was hit with special assessments, and the fees can be, expensive and things like that. But single family fractional ownership, it can work. Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of different ways to do it and make it work. The key is, the fundamentals of the cash flow. So if you're investing for cash flow, you just analyze it and say, okay, if I put 100,000 with 10 other people into this $1 million property, what's our ROI?
Yeah. No, again, I think the setup makes sense. If here's the big deal. If the investors were rational and they were doing the right comparisons, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I see fractional ownership being kind of that bubble-like activity. I'm not saying we're there yet. It just, maybe I'm hypersensitive because I've been doing this for a long time. I can just see all of these newbie investors going, oh my God, I can't find anything in my market. I'm going to go buy 1/10 over here and 1/8 over there. And pretty soon they got a smorgasbord of partial ownerships. And then the recession comes, and, real estate does what real estate does sometimes, and it's all unequal. And even if they're strong, they're invested now with potentially hundreds of people they don't know. The law of averages say some of those aren't going to play. So I don't know.
Well, it's like I said, it just depends on how it's structured. And usually there's a buyout situation. So if somebody gets in distress or whatever, you can buy them out. Almost like, so it's very common. It goes way back, so mostly in resort markets is where this came from.
Sure.
During downtimes when they couldn't sell property. So the only way you could sell them was to, bring people together where it made more sense. Now, again, in commercial real estate, this is a tenant in common property. So that's been around forever in commercial real estate, where you can have, what's really cool about that, and what's really cool about these fractional ownerships, is they can be quite liquid. They can be more liquid than owning the property itself. Because if you have a small fractional share of $100,000 in a $10 million property, and there's 50 owners or whatever, well, you're just selling $100,000. Who doesn't have 100,000? So
lots of people, Greg. You live in a different bubble.
You know what I mean? People that are going to invest in property. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I was just funny.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't have $100,000 laying around?
Come on, I got one. Let me go get my
You're going to get some feedback on that one.
I am going to get
you guys, you elitist. No, hey, I started with nothing, from nothing, no money, so I don't want to hear it. I made $30,000 a year, worked 90 hours a week for it, so that I was investing in my future. But I was managing
go watch
a
his video, The Truck in the Toolbox. You will see how he started.
I started with nothing. So anyways.
That's funny.
But that being said, so in commercial real estate, it's called tenants in common, and it's very liquid. You can tax exchange in and out of it. So it's a great vehicle. But I understand your point. When the market blows up, it doesn't matter whether it's fractional ownership or anything else. The market's going to blow up. Everybody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, there's just two things that concern me. So, having this conversation, I'm so glad we did. I feel better than I did before we had it. I just think about new investors not doing the homework. That always scares me, right? New investors not doing the homework, chasing the latest fad. I can just hear them. Oh, I own this. I can hear people saying, I own a mansion in Beverly Hills. I own a penthouse in New York. I can hear it. And really what they own is 1/10 or whatever it is, 1/12 or whatever.
Well, and what's the use? Are they renting them? I mean, what are they doing with them?
Why they have to be for cash flow in this model,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah,
it's
I haven't heard of the 50 owner thing.
no, it's still new. There's actually tech companies spinning up getting A round funding to do this. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of highlighted as something that is coming. It's very nascent, but coming. And again, I go to real estate meetups. I talk to people. I know what they're going to say. People like to flex on social media because I can hear them. I can hear it already. I can see the social media post. I own a mansion in Beverly Hills, a penthouse in New York, and this or that. And then the market turns, and it's just crazy.
Oh yeah, I know. It's like the people that are passively investing in apartments and they're, touting out there, I own all these units or I do this.
10,000 units.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they go speak at these conferences,
Yeah,
they're on
exactly.
these panels at conferences, because they've passively invested in an apartment building and they know nothing about real estate. It's really funny.
Yeah, when you do the math, they own one unit. they own
don't
one
even own
bedroom
that.
in one unit.
They don't even own that. They it's like buying a stock. You don't own the company. If you
No.
buy stock in GM, it's not like you can post on social media, I own GM. You own a share in the company, but doesn't mean you know how to manufacture a car.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, it's
any
pretty
of that.
crazy.
But anyways, it's really funny. But no, that doesn't scare me. That's something that's
Okay.
been around for a long time when it's
Awesome.
done well. And in this day and age, there's all kinds of disclosures. So if somebody buys into something like that and they get hurt, what's their own fault? Because there's condo docs, there's investment disclosures, just like in syndications, or any other investment, you got to do your homework. And it's like I always say, and I got a bunch of pushback from this,
Yeah.
even if you're investing $5,000 in Cardone Capital, have an attorney review the documents.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you a few $100. And somebody kind of, threw back at me on that saying, why spend $500 on a $5,000 investment? Well, if you don't want to, then be willing to throw away 5,000. So would you rather spend 500 to make sure you've got the right protections? If you're going to invest 5,000 or 300 or whatever you can get somebody to review the docs for.
Pretty crazy. Well, this has been good. I feel better. See, I love talking to my experts. Sometimes I feel more scared. Sometimes I feel better. I feel better this time. Thanks, Greg.
Go find you some fractional investments and throw 100 grand in them.
There you go. It's just lying around.